Look, I know there's no new info about Injustice 3, especially with how WB Games is running things with their IPs and NetherRealm fumbling Mortal Kombat. I mean, there has been recent talks between James Gunn and NetherRealm who made the Injustice series, so being a huge fan of Injustice, I wanted to make my own concept of what I think Injustice 3 would look like and who I would want to see on the roster. A lot of speculation for the title of the game is Injustice 3 Gods Will Fall, so this roster will follow that premise and deliver on it with the characters and storyline. Now, being that this is my wishlist, so to say, I will not be including every character possible, and I'll be leaving some characters off who have been in the games previously. Breaking down the characters, I want to say that based on the history of the franchise, NetherRealm added 8 characters between each game, 4 on the base roster and 4 as DLC fighters. Gods Among Us had 24 characters on the base roster with 6 DLC, bringing it to a total of 30 characters. Injustice 2 started off with 28 and added 10 DLC characters to finish up with 38. Following this pattern, I'll have 32 characters on the base roster with 14 DLC fighters to have a total of 46 characters. I'll be mentioning returning fighters, new additions, and all the DLC characters in the form of 4 different fighter packs. I'll also be going into detail about the story after I go through all the characters I want to include, tying together the pieces of the fighters I have listed. I'd also like to mention that I'll try to make this as comic accurate as possible, keeping dead characters dead, but if you see some that I mention later, they'll be fully explained on why and how they'll be brought back within the story. With all that being said, let's get this thing started. Like I said before, I'll be including 32 characters on the base roster. Not everyone who has been in both games will return, and I'll explain why I left some people off of the list. Now to start us off, we obviously need these following 5 heroes. Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, Green Lantern, and The Flash. The Justice League makes total sense to bring back into this game. These are no-brainer characters that will lead the story. You have Batman being the leader of the insurgency and Superman making the regime. I'll get into the plot details later, but again, these are just obvious picks for an Injustice game. Next, I have Cyborg coming in, and yes, he is a leaguer, no doubt about that, but I separated him as a callback to the next person I will bring up at our 7th spot, being Raven. Both of them are Titans, first and foremost, so that's why I kept Cyborg separate and it'll all make sense in the story section of this video. Next up on this list, I want to bring back Zatanna. Yes, even though she was a DLC fighter for Injustice Gods Among Us, she makes sense to bring back as we go through this roster. Throwing some villains into the mix, I got Black Adam as a side character. I know everyone is tired of seeing this dude, but he goes with the plot, and unfortunately, Shazam is dead. Otherwise, I would have immediately swapped these two. Now, on to bigger villains, I got Darkseid. He's going to be the big bad in this game, being that he is a new god and all. I think he needs to be his own character with his own spot in the story this time around, starting off on the roster. A surprising pick I have is Ares, who will be a minor antagonist to Wonder Woman playing a similar role to Injustice Gods Among Us. That's pretty much it for the returning villains. Now, I have some even more unorthodox picks. I basically want to recruit the Teen Titans, being Blue Beetle, who was pretty much confirmed in his alternate ending, same with Firestorm, who's my next pick. I think Supergirl was kind of random in the second game, but she had a big part siding with Batman against Superman, being a fellow Kryptonian and all. And I want to follow that up post Brainiac in this game, so I'm including her. Starfire is my next pick, and even though she was a DLC fighter, I want her on the main roster since she plays a big role in the Teen Titans. Finally, to wrap up my list of returning characters, I got Aquaman. Yes, he's in the league, but in this universe, he sort of acts as his own entity, and he really only wants Atlantean autonomy in the world. I was originally going to leave him off of the list and have him killed for the plot, but the way that storyline was going, it was pretty much identical to Flashpoint. Although, that could easily be adapted for another game in the future. Now, on to people I left off the list. I really wanted to avoid a lot of Batman characters since I feel like he gets the most push and there are so many better characters out there. Batman Inc. is awesome, and I love that group, but it just gets annoying. I don't see the need for returning characters like Robin. We've gotten Damian twice already, and Dick is dead. Let's just leave it at that. Tim is dead in the story, so no need to bring him back for a repetitive playstyle. Jason, and I love Red Hood, and I was considering putting him on the base roster, but you'll see something interesting I put in the next section. I took out Catwoman and Bane because, again, we don't need more Batman characters. To me, there's no plot relevance to Harley and Joker anymore. Joker's dead, Harley just Harley, and I know everyone is just as fed up with her as I am. A lot of characters are dead in this point of the Injustice storyline, and other characters I just didn't feel like bringing in. Again, this is my list, and what I personally want to see happen, so sorry if fighters on your wish list don't make the cut. Time to start on the other half of the roster, with the remaining 16 new fighters coming to the game. I'm definitely going to start off with a couple of the most requested fan favorites for the Injustice series, and ones I personally think would fit in perfectly for the story I have planned. These two being none other than John Constantine and Etrigan. They fit perfectly in this game, and I would love to see the banter between them. Honestly, as you can tell by now, I want a focus on the magic users in this game. So the next person coming up, I'm gonna pull a little old trick from Injustice 2 when they introduced Enchantress to reference Suicide Squad, which dropped a year prior to the game coming out. This one, however, will be a callback to James Gunn's Creature Commandos with none other than Cersei. She is a Wonder Woman villain who just so happens to be a sorceress. I know I said Dick is dead, but I'll be breaking that rule by bringing him back, just not in the way that you would think. I want him as Deadman, which is, again, plot relevance, and the fans have been asking for this. Another dead Titan that the fans have been begging for is Beast Boy, who I'll bring back in a similar manner to Joker and Injustice 2. Let me bring in yet another fan favorite with Static Shock as a member of this game's Teen Titans. No explanation needed. I would have preferred him to Raiden and the Black Lightning premiere skin in Injustice 2, but whatever. A huge callback to the OG Teen Titans TV show, I want to introduce an obscure character that no one would see coming. This being Red X. However, like I said earlier, I actually want to do something really interesting with Red X and make Jason Todd take up the mantle. Either this, or just have Red Hood come back with a new moveset and with his outlaw style look. I'm a fan of either one. Since we're going with the theme of outlaws, I find it fitting to have both Arsenal and Artemis as new characters. Starfire's already on my roster, so it just fits. Arsenal could also be Red Arrow or Speedy, I'm not too picky. If that's the case, he could have a Green Arrow premiere skin. He'd be mourning Oliver Queen's death, so he'd definitely want a piece of the action. Artemis is again pointing back to Wonder Woman, so she fits in with a new playstyle. Let me show some love to the villains. I did say Darkseid would be a big bad, so I would love to see Big Barda in this game as a Fury. I didn't bring back any of the Lanterns besides Hal Jordan, and I think it's time for a new one with Star Sapphire, similar to how Atrocitus showed up. Showing a little bit more love to Darkseid, I think out of all his followers, Steppenwolf would fit the best as a fighter. I'm not too familiar with Desaad and Granny Goodness to introduce them, but I'll leave them in as honorable mentions in case you guys wanted them. Now to touch on some more minor villains, I want to bring up two very random ones you absolutely would not expect. Brother Blood and Simon. These two will play a big role in the story for setting up the next big bad. Yes, you heard that right. I'll be making this storyline have two big villains who will actually split the plot in two, but converge with each other at the same time. If you haven't guessed it by now, with all the dark magic around, the second big villain in this game who will be at odds with Darkseid is none other than one of my favorites, Trigon. I hope everything makes sense and is tied together now. And yes, I know it sounds like I'm ripping this game right out of Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. I see the similarities. Now to wrap up this list of new fighters, the 16th pick and everyone's favorite gimmick, Plastic Man. He just makes sense and would be fun to play, especially having decent plot and significance. With all that being said, let's move on to the DLC fighters I have for a total of 4 fighter packs that would come to the game. So for DLC, I'm only going to include DC heroes. I'll probably do a separate video for a guest list of characters I would love to see from different franchises come over, including Mortal Kombat. But because of the story's relevance, these are the DC characters I want to see joining the roster as fighters. Adding on to this, I would love it if there were added chapters based on the characters that are added, so the story continues with new characters coming, alongside those alternate endings that the realm had for each fighter. To start us off, I have Wonder Girl, Superboy, and Booster Gold. In the Injustice storyline, Superman solos the Titans, pretty much leaving Superboy near death and forcing them all into the Phantom Zone. There's some other stuff that goes on, but eventually Booster Gold saves Wonder Girl and Superboy from space. Having those three come back would be nice and fun. Wonder Girl and Superboy could be a bit lazy, but I think they differentiate enough from both Wonder Woman and Superman respectively to have fun movesets to play with. Next up on the list is Gizmo. He's a right hand of Brother Blood, and him having a medium level place in the plot would actually be fun to incorporate some Hive members in the mix. Going off of that, we have Jinx, who actually ends up becoming a Titan later, so a DLC sorceress would be nice to see from Hive as well. Next up, I actually want Aqualad. We saw Black Manta as a DLC fighter in Injustice 2, and I originally had Aqualad replacing Aquaman with my first idea, where I had Aquaman dying, but again, that would have been a Flashpoint-esque story. For the 7th pick, I got Mr. Terrific. He'd be cool to see, and he does have some plot significance to Injustice. Since I did have Decide and Granny Goodness as honorable mentions, I could honestly just fit them in as DLC, but I'm not sure how they would play. I can even add Orion, adding some nice complexity being the son of Darkseid. I would actually like to have Mr. Miracle as DLC, which would be nice to see, having another new god as a hero. Coming up with the final 3 DLC fighters, I've got to have some good picks. I waited so long to mention these two, but I can't talk about the next Injustice game without bringing up the Watchmen. A lot of people wanted them on the base roster, but I can't go without these two, Dr. Manhattan and Rorschach. And for our final pick, I want you to choose the final 14th DLC fighter that would come to the game. Whether that be the likes of Red Tornado or Wildcat, I would love to see who you want in the next Injustice game. Try and go with the theme I have going on, but if not, no worries. I'd love to hear your ideas down in the comments below. Now with that, I've waited long enough to talk about the story and the plot I have brewing for this game. I'll try and keep this as short as possible, and yes, there are definitely going to be some similarities to Dark Apocalypse War with this one. This game follows the ending of the story to Injustice 2, with Batman sending Superman to the Phantom Zone once again. Supergirl is rebuilding the Justice League alongside Bruce with the aftermath of Brainiac. We start off with Green Lantern as he's approached and attacked by Star Sapphire after she tries to coerce him into joining her with Darkseid. After beating her in a fight, he returns to the League to inform of the imminent threat on the horizon. Darkseid is coming to Earth in search of the anti-life equation to conquer the universe. Thus, Batman needs Superman to come out and fight alongside him. With Superman and the rest of the regime coming out of the Phantom Zone, Raven, who originally sided with Superman, did so as she succumbed to her father's darkness. The Justice League is being reformed with the help of the Titans. Black Adam was sent back to Kahndaq, Wonder Woman to the Amazons, and Aquaman was already in Atlantis. Cut to Wonder Woman being approached by Ares once again. He taunts her and she asks him why he has returned as he only comes out for war. He tells her that she has no idea what's to come. They fight and all he says is that there are 2 forces at play. She begins to question this, and we cut to the Titans with leaders like Zatanna and Starfire helping the group. John Constantine reaches out to Zatanna and tells her he feels a force of evil coming, but is unsure of what it is. Then, Simon and Brother Blood attack the Titans, with the latter kidnapping Raven. While all of this is happening, Raven has been having illusions of her father, and Beast Boy comes to her as an apparition. They fight in a hallucination, but by that time it's too late. Brother Blood has taken her to the Church of Blood, where evil chaos magic users await to summon Trigon. Cersei, Brother Blood, and Simon are there working together to call upon Trigon and bring him to the mortal plane from Raven's gem. Cut back to the League. They're preparing to take on Darkseid's forces as Wonder Woman tells them what happened with Ares. Meanwhile, the Titans tell them that Raven has been captured. All of this is going on at the same time, with Cyborg in attendance, who just so happens to be connected to Darkseid via motorbikes without him knowing. Now that Darkseid is aware of the coming of another, he sees an opportunity to send as much of his forces down to fight them as possible. Thus, he sends Big Barda and Steppenwolf to do his bidding and keep the League at bay, occupied even more than before. While speaking alone with Bruce, the Flash is possessed by a dead man who just so happens to be Dick Grayson. He shows himself to Bruce, and his form changes to then fight. And once Deadman wins, Dick tells him that something more evil than Darkseid is coming and he must prepare. Not only this, but that he needs to find Jason. Cut to Steppenwolf and Big Barda coming down. The Outlaws begin to fight them with Jason as Red X, Roy as Arsenal, and Artemis all fighting them together with the help of Starfire, who went off to defend against Darkseid, while the rest of the Titans look to find Raven. Cut back to Batman. He tells the Flash to alert Aquaman of the imminent threat. While all this is going on, Batman reaches out to Constantine, who then realizes how serious the threat is. Together, they band up a Justice League Dark, composed of Constantine, Zatanna, Etrigan, and Batman himself. Superman is left with Supergirl, who then meets up with the Titans. Wonder Woman begins to wonder what to think of the new threat and finds herself looking for Cersei. Once she confirms Cersei's location, she informs the League and the Titans that she is with Brother Blood and Simon, forcing Raven to summon Trigon for them. While the Outlaws focus on keeping Darkseid's advances at bay, the Titans focus on rescuing Raven, with Wonder Woman leading the charge, as the League splits off to focus on Trigon, with the other half focusing on Darkseid. Wonder Woman fights Cersei, while the others try to save Raven, and finish off both Brother Blood and Simon. By the time they reach Raven, however, it's too late and Trigon escapes, to then possess every member of the Justice League. With everyone incapacitated by Trigon, the Titans must now focus on fighting the Justice League. The Outlaws are met with their match. Red X and Arsenal handle Batman, Starfire and Artemis handle Wonder Woman, Black Adam gets recruited by Supergirl to help take on Superman, since he's susceptible to magic even while enhanced. Blue Beetle and Firestorm handle the Flash and Aquaman with their sound and fire-based attacks respectively. Plastic Man comes out of nowhere to hold back Green Lantern while Static shocks him. With everything going on, Darkseid presses his advances. Zatanna, Etrigan, and Constantine, seeing this, agree that the only way they get out of this is if they let the two behemoths duel. So they take Raven and complete the job where Cersei, Simon, and Brother Blood left off. They fully summon Trigon and bring him onto the physical plane. At the same time, Darkseid comes to Earth in the flesh to take over the universe. With Trigon fully materialized, all the Leaguers are reverted back to normal, but are pretty much out of commission from both the possession and having been fighting the Titans and Outlaws. At this time, Trigon and Darkseid duke it out to see who will take over the universe for their ruling. At this point, there will be a similar choice of mechanics from the Injustice 2 storyline, to choose to fight as Darkseid or as Trigon. Whoever wins will then have to face everyone else. If Darkseid wins, the magic users imprison Trigon once again in Raven's Gem and send him back to the Azarath dimension where he stays. If Trigon wins, Cyborg uses the Mother Box to transport Darkseid and his forces back to Apocalypse. Then, after this fight, you fight the winner as Superman. Once you win with Superman, Trigon will be sent to Azarath and Darkseid will be sent to Apocalypse, whoever won the original fight. Now that Superman is back out of the Phantom Zone, we do the same thing as Injustice 2. You choose to fight as Batman or Superman, and there will be alternate endings depending on which one wins. Anyways, that's the story. I tried to cover all the characters I mentioned, but if I didn't, my apologies. Let me know your thoughts on the story. I know it's a mix of Justice League vs. Teen Titans and Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, but those were some banger movies, and I think this is the next step for the Injustice franchise. Bring in a decent amount of magic users and new gods fighting old gods to set the stage for even more characters and storylines like the Greek Pantheon and Warworld in the future. This is pretty much my dream story, and being able to go on from this would be amazing to see what would happen afterwards with the Injustice franchise. I did mention DLC storylines with the addition of chapters to the main story for each of the characters. To start off with the first fighter pack, Wonder Girl, Superboy, and Booster Gold, they pretty much return to this time after the fight and immediately run a fade with Superman and Wonder Woman. Seeing Blue Beetle alongside them, Booster Gold feels betrayed and fights him, only to learn that they're in the wrong. Wonder Girl first fights Artemis, then Wonder Woman afterwards. Superboy first fights Supergirl, then Superman afterwards. And finally, Booster Gold first fights Firestorm, then Blue Beetle afterwards. The next fighter pack would include Gizmo, Jinx, Aqualad, and Mr. Terrific. Gizmo and Jinx work together with Brother Blood and essentially fight against the Titans, where Aqualad comes from the depths as a sorcerer to save them. Cyborg takes care of Gizmo, while Aqualad takes care of Jinx, who later becomes a Titan. Mr. Terrific resumes his fight against the insurgency, but soon loses to Plastic Man. He then comes to terms with the regrouping of the Justice League and accepts defeat. The third fighter pack is made up of Granny Goodness, Desaad, Orion, and Mr. Miracle. The new gods begin to fight each other on Apocalypse after Darkseid's failure to take Earth. They all fight each other, and I'll throw Star Sapphire, Big Barda, Steppenwolf, and Darkseid into the mix. They essentially all split up, with Granny Goodness, Desaad, and Steppenwolf siding with Darkseid. The remaining characters, Star Sapphire, Orion, and Mr. Miracle, align themselves with Big Barda and go back to Earth to not only seek peace, but start up the Justice Society, having become aware of their wrongdoings and wanting to leave Darkseid and Apocalypse. The fourth and final fighter pack will consist of Dr. Manhattan and Rorschach alongside the bonus fighter I left for you guys. This could be a Watchmen specific pack, but the main premise would be that they come over to aid the Justice League in future threats and whatnot. I would also like to have a premiere skin for Rorschach being the question. Overall, these extensions of the story following the main storyline's ending would work well to incorporate these characters in the game and promote their reason for being on the roster. I am very happy with how this video turned out. From the returning roster and new characters, to the DLC fighters and their storylines extending the main story of the game. I think this is a perfect representation of what I had in mind for Injustice. I'm extremely content with this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Did you like the roster? Do you like the story? What would you have done differently? Let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts. And with that, thank you all for watching.